Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome. It is a great pleasure to have all of you here for this very special webinar brought to you by the Smith School of Business at Queen's University. My name is Aziz Garuba. I'm going to be your host and MC for this afternoon or evening, depending on where you're joining us from. I am a Queen's Smith alumni, MBA 2012, and I'm also the host of the Made to Lead podcast, a podcast where I share stories of amazing Black individuals who are leading in their own space. And today's discussion is going to be about the path to leadership. So lessons on career growth and inspiring stories from Black leaders in Canada. And we're hosting this event in celebration of Black Histories and Futures Month because Black people don't only need 1 month. We're Black 365 days of the year. And as always, today's webinar is presented by Smith Business Insight. So before I introduce our panel, there's just a few bits of housekeeping that I want to get through. This hour-long discussion is going to be recorded, and you'll receive a link to the recording by email in just a few days. So if there are folks that you know that wanted to attend but missed it, you can always share the link with them. If you want to ask a question to our panel, and I very much hope that you do because this is going to be an engaging discussion, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to the questions in the second part of the presentation as well. The chat function is also enabled, so you can definitely write some comments, throw shout outs, let us know where you're listening in from as well. That would be great to spur some engagement for us. I also want to acknowledge that Queens is situated on the traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory, and we're grateful to be able to live, learn, and play on these lands. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our amazing panel. First up is Dr. Wanda Costen, who's the Dean of the Smith School of Business. Her passion on the belief that business can drive positive social impact has made her an amazing catalyst for partnerships between academia, business, and public organizations on diversity initiatives and training programs. She's got some research insight in strategic human resources, women in leadership, and racial and gender inequality in organizations. And she's working to ensure that business research and teaching at Smith are training emerging leaders to thrive within the changing aspects of society. Next up, we have Roxanne Ducasse, who is a senior consultant of business process reengineering at Walmart Canada. Roxanne is a versatile professional excelling in consulting, retail operations, and project management. Formerly a public servant with Citizenship and Immigration Canada, she moved to Walmart Canada's Strategic Operations Program, culminating in leading an $80 million Walmart supercenter. At Walmart, Roxanne spearheads cross-functional initiatives, enhancing organizational efficiency, and she has expertise in operational performance management and strategic leadership. Next up, we have Eguono Omotayo, who is a vice president of product at HomeStars. She's a visionary leader with over 14 years of experience in diverse fields, including telecom, banking, and service marketplaces. Eguono holds both an engineering degree from McGill and an MBA from Smith. And as a Black woman in STEM, she's keenly aware of the power of representation as well as the power of diversity of thought, cultures, and strongly promotes those in her workplace and community. Eguono is an inclusive leader who brings courage, humility, and open-mindedness to work every day. In 2021, she won the Catalyst Honors Emerging Leader Award for her contribution to building an inclusive culture in her teams. So thank you very much, ladies. We appreciate you being here, and excited to get this conversation going. So, given the title of this webinar, let's start by talking about your path to leadership. So we'll start with you, Roxanne. Your career began at the federal government. How did you make that transition from the feds to Walmart, and what made you want to pursue a leadership track?
Yeah, thank you, Aziz. So at the time when I was at in the public sector with Citizenship and Immigration Canada, I was about 5 or 6 years in, still quite early on in my career. And I knew there was something missing. I wanted to pivot to something different. I wanted to dip my toe. I knew it was a little bit too early in my career for me to fully kind of commit to say, hey, I want to be a public servant for the rest of my career. And I had my eye on getting an MBA from the Smith School of Business specifically. So it was actually through the MBA program that I was able to pivot to Walmart Canada through their leadership development program. And the reason that kind of caught my eye, specifically about that program, was that it was a mix of I was excited and I was also very scared. So at the same time, it was kind of like that feeling you have, okay, this is going to be a good growth opportunity for me. Because as part of that program, I was going to get a chance to lead an actual Walmart supercenter. So actually lead a team of about 250 associates in a Walmart supercenter. And I enjoy being of service. So kind of to your second question about why did I want to pursue that leadership track, I enjoy being of service. I know what I can accomplish as an individual contributor, but for me, the challenge is really to see, okay, how can I motivate my team? How can I motivate others so that they can be successful and achieve results as well? Because at the end of the day, as a leader, if you think of the concept of servant leadership, is that you're there to help them reach the results. You're here to help them provide the advice, the guidance, the support. At the end of the day, if they're missing one of those resources, that's on you because that's a miss from the leadership, from the leadership part. And that's something I truly believe in. And that's why I decided to pursue that leadership track, that leadership development program within Walmart, because those were the skills and the challenges that I wanted to tackle to continue to grow, to become a more servant leader.
That's amazing. I think you and I have had a similar path. I also started my career at the government as a tax auditor, and the Queen's MBA was my stepping stone into pivoting into the private sector and heading off into banking. So that's amazing. Um, so Dr. Costin, you started your career in the U.S. military at West Point. How did that experience affect the way you view leadership and the leader's role in an organization?
Yeah, thanks very much. That's an excellent question. And I would say it's the foundation of who I am today, fundamentally. Folks don't realize it, but the United States Military Academy in particular, while people think of it as developing military leaders, it's really leaders in general. We spend a small amount of time in the actual military. But the core component of it all is character. It's character development. And Roxanne's commentary around servant leadership is true. But in our case, it's really around this core notion of honor and integrity, this sense of doing what's right, having a deep sense of duty, not just to our country and the military, but also to the people that we are leading. And we had a phrase at West Point that was the harder right over the easier wrong. And that steers me to this very day, this core character development around what it actually means to lead, but framed in the notion of honor, integrity, an immense amount of holding one's accountability to high standards. So that's how it plays out for me every day.
Amazing, amazing. I really like that. The harder right versus the easier wrong. I think that's a quotable quote that we can all use in our lives as well. So Iguano, you graduated as an engineer. How did you evolve from engineering to, eventually working in banking and now in what is arguably a tech company in product?
Yeah. When I graduated from engineering, I just wanted to do telecom. I was so fascinated by phones. My whole thing was, let's go make phones. Let's go figure this out. Let's build amazing phones. It was all about phones for me. And so I worked in the telecom space for a little bit, and then I got tired of it. And then I realized my boss at the time, she put me to lead a community of practice for the QA team. And I was the youngest on the team, and I was put on to do this. And I thought, why me? I don't think I can do this. I'm scared. I'm nervous, all the things. But then I did it. And I did it across Canada, Hungary, and Sweden. And we actually led some really good outcomes. And then I thought, oh, there's more to me than just phones. So let me go build on that. And that's what led me to the Queen's MBA. And I don't know about you guys, but when you do the MBA, you feel like you can do everything. You can do anything. You're this superhuman. You're this hero. And I came out of it just thinking, what am I going to do now? Because honestly, the world is my oyster. But what I really wanted to do was keep learning. And I thought, I got into the CIBC T-Lab program at the time, which was something that develops your leadership. You do rotations, and then you learn different parts of the bank. So banking wasn't something I'd ever done. So I thought, hey, let me go do this. It allows me to still be in tech, which I love because I want to stay, creative, innovative. But I still get to develop my leadership skills that I get to learn. And so I did that, and really got a lot of experience from that, from my 3 rotations. And really, just after CIBC, I went on mat leave. I came back. I did a job where I got to lead a transformation program within CIBC that was huge. Again, I kind of surprised myself. I said, oh, I can do more. And then something else happened within CIBC. They hired a CLO, Kike Lomo, I forget her last name. But when she joined the bank, I saw a Nigerian Black mother in an executive position, and I thought, wow. And that basically made me take a leap, and I applied for VP roles, and I got one. And that's how
Nice.
I landed at HomeStars.
Amazing, amazing. Kika is a very inspirational woman. For those that you don't know, she is a phenomenal powerhouse in the legal space in Canada, and I think she was a major steal from Interact when she joined CIBC in their executive ranks. So that's an amazing story, Gwana. Thanks for sharing. So frequently on my podcast, I usually talk about leadership and I say that, leadership is not necessarily about the title, but it's about sometimes the impact and the influence that you have on people. And so deciding that you want to become a leader is really about sometimes putting up your hand and saying, yeah, I want that responsibility of not, maybe managing people or taking on challenges. I might win, I might not, but I'm willing to put in that work and be the one that's accountable. So maybe for everyone, and you can decide who wants to go first, but do you remember at what point, where you decided you wanted to pursue more leadership roles or more leadership responsibilities, and what really drove that decision?
I can start because I just shared my story of what really drove the decision for me. So again, my boss at the time, she asked me, hey, you're part of the QA team. We have a lot of things we want to evolve here. Can you lead it? And what really drove it from me, initially, I didn't think I could do it, but then when I did it, I realized I liked solving problems, which kind of ties to my engineering background too. But I liked solving problems. I enjoyed the challenge of thinking about how to make things better and how to make things better for everyone, not just for myself. So what we did there was going to drive efficiencies and improvements for 3 countries, really. And I think when that was achieved, I thought, hey, you can have a lot of impact if you put yourself, in that position and really make, you talked about accountability. It's a lot of accountability, but if someone has to do it, right? So if you would just take the courage and do it for everyone, there's a lot of impact that you can drive. And that's really what got me going to this point.
Amazing, amazing. Anyone else care to share?
Maybe I'll kind of pick back on that. So for myself, I think I can't say there was like a particular moment, but when I think back on my career, there was like nuggets throughout of different moments where I realized that there was more to me, just kind of like Iguanas was saying, there's more to yourself than like phones. For me, my undergrad was in statistics. My dad was an engineer. I was always a numbers person. So I was an analyst when I was in the government. But I have to say, in those years, as I noticed there was like a pattern. It's like, although I was maybe like a junior analyst at the time, there was a pattern of people coming to me for advice. There was a pattern of like me leading certain things or when I was volunteering for certain things. And I remember like that was like, why are they coming to me? Why are they coming to me? Right. And I enjoyed helping them. I enjoyed helping them solve whatever there was that to be solved whenever there was a new initiative that I needed to that would raise my hand for, and lead it. And I enjoyed it. I knew I enjoyed it, but it was never in an official capacity. So now kind of fast forward to when the Walmart opportunity came and I said I was excited but scared. It was kind of like part of me is like, I know I can do it, but I just have to get over that fear of like, okay, just put yourself out there. And that was definitely, throwing me into the ranks with like, that many associates in in a different industry. But for me, I think that's what drove that decision, just finally listening to that voice and just following my gut feel based on just past experience and what I truly enjoy doing. To me, that's the voice I listen to.
Nice, Roxanne. And I like what you mentioned about the dwelling or recognizing the past experience and just sort of standing on that. And I think that's things like that is what gives confidence, right? So and a lot of us that have happened to get into leadership roles, there's a certain level of confidence that's required to really, really succeed. And maybe Dr. Coston, I'll start with you on this one. But who taught you to be confident, and what's the advice on how to learn and build that kind of confidence?
Yeah, it's first of all, I do want to share. Thank you, ladies, for that commentary. I read a book very long ago in my early 30s. It was called "Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway." So they've just explained that you shouldn't be worried when you have fear. That's just part of the human context, right? But do it anyway. So that's what they've just shared. But this is interesting because ironically, the person who gave me confidence was my mom, right? My mom is the one who told me I was smart, I was capable. I would also say I'm a huge advocate for athletics. I'm a former athlete. And the reason I'm an advocate for athletics, especially for women, is because you develop competence, you develop confidence, and then you learn how to play a role on a real team. Like we throw that word team around a lot. In org behavior, there's a specific context around which you are actually a team.
Mhm.
But when you play on an athletic team, you learn quite a few things, which builds your confidence. Like, how do I contribute even if I'm having an off day? But believe it or not, it was my mom who just said, you're really, really smart. And when you're young, you believe your parents, quite frankly. Like, I don't know if she thought, I think she just said that, frankly. But I believed her. So I actually started doing the things that I thought smart kids did. And I loved it. So it built up my confidence. And then as you do more and more activities and things, you start to tell yourself, well, this is easy. I will say my mom, to this day, I use this as an example. I was literally working on my dissertation, which is a very difficult accomplishment. I should also share that I'm the first person in my family to go to university, and certainly no one in my family has a PhD. And so in their mind, it's like, you're smart, you can do that. And I was freaking out about doing my dissertation. And my mom's response to me literally was, well, it's not West Point, so how hard can it be? And I literally stopped in my tracks and thought, well, okay, if that's always going to be my comparative other, everything is easy after West Point, right? So it's a confidence that you get from having endured and been successful. But it was my mom who planted the seed that I have the capacity to have a positive impact in a variety of different ways.
Amazing, amazing story. And you know, there's a strength that having people around you that support and believe in you gives you, you know, and gives you that motivation to just kind of keep pushing as well. So maybe so any one of you to share, you know, what are some other strengths that you feel you brought to the table as you began to move up, and how have you made the most of what you're good at?
I don't mind starting with this one.
Yep.
I think for me, the main strength, just kind of like just I said, you know, before it's all the tactical, you think you're smart, you think it's about the numbers. But for me, I think what in the past couple of years realized is my empathy. Especially when you come at, as the leader, going back to the topic of servant leadership, is really that empathy of being able to understand the associate, the customer, the people on your team, know where they're at, to see what they're missing to get to where kind of like where that gap is. What do they need? What kind of support that they need to reach the goals and the results that they're looking to get. So I think without empathy, it's hard to kind of fully understand. So I think that's a skill, unfortunately, that's probably not, I think now we're hearing a little bit more about it in the leadership context and business, but definitely I think first and foremost, that would be the main thing I would have brought forward. And in terms of the second part of your question, in terms of what to make the most of what of the gap there, I think sometimes we dwell too much on our weaknesses. I think we dwell a little bit and we kind of force ourselves to either fake until you make it or kind of refine a skill. And sometimes it's a question of, is it a skill that you haven't learned, or is it a skill that you're just not, that doesn't energize you and that drains you and that frustrates you? Because I think sometimes you want to make sure you understand that difference. And what to do about that is like, I think the first thing is awareness of that gap, awareness of, is this a skill I just need to refine? Or is this a skill that I know that that's not where my energy comes from? So I am aware of, okay, I know it's so, and I always say, even if it's something that you're not familiar with, understand it at least high level. So that if you're going to talk to someone, you can at least guide them. And if somebody's going to talk to you about it, you know enough to at least navigate and know if it needs to kind of go to another subject matter expert, but at least you want to be able to be present and not be completely oblivious in that conversation, I would say. So I'd say that would be how to make the most of it, is staying aware of exactly those skills that you're not necessarily your strong points.
Right. And maybe we can use that to pivot into a question. And Iguano, I'll probably ask you this one. You know, sometimes when we have these weaknesses, right, or things that we feel are weaknesses, they can feel like obstacles, right? In addition to everything else that's around us, that's an obstacle. But so, are there any memorable obstacles that you faced at some point in your career, and what was it, and how did it help you grow and learn and to get to this point that you're at?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say at the time when cloud was new and I would say the bank was just starting to adopt it, I was put on to give a presentation about cloud and, you know, what are the different types, and I don't know, to solve something with what we were trying to work with using cloud. And I had zero clue what all of this was about. Because, yeah, I have a tech background, but I hadn't studied anything in this regard. And, you know, it felt like everyone's eyes were on me to come give this presentation and to come talk about this thing as some form of expert. And I was like, this is really scary. So that was something that I think it really propelled me, though, because it got me studying. That's actually what got me to go read up. I read, I did my own self-study, learned much about it, and went to present, and all of that was successful. I would say that what I learned out of that was that, again, back to courage, right? It's the idea that you don't always have to have it all figured out. You don't always have to be the one who knows everything. And it might actually be a real weakness that's needed in the workplace, like in my example. But you can still go at it. You can still go try, you know, just have the courage to try. And I just leaned on people in my network who I believe had more understanding about it, and then, you know, got my whole thing together. And fast forward a few years, as I started to apply for VP jobs, like I said before, I remember there was this job that had me filling out an assessment and a whole assignment, take home assignment. I had to do this work on the weekend that took my whole Saturday, and it was intense. But it was all about cloud. And when I did it, I was like, oh yeah, I know that, I know that, I know that. And it was, you know, I felt like the G. It was interesting because I remember when I started, I had no clue, but when I was done with it, no one should contact me about cloud. I don't know anything about cloud today. But at the time, I went from cloud, zero knowledge in cloud, to enough to actually ace an interview. So I think just the lesson out of that for me is face it. It's okay. It's okay. I think these things come to challenge us. They come to grow us. That's the whole intention. And so just let it happen.
I guess sometimes our biggest obstacle is our mindset, right? In a lot of these things. And especially as we move towards more leadership challenges, you know, there's that mental block that we sometimes put in front of us that says, oh man, this is a big leap. This is a big title. Am I ready? Am I the right person? And we see that in a lot of Black individuals where, you know, there's a tendency for us to self-sabotage opportunities, even though we're actually very qualified for them. And, you know, if I use that to segue into all of us here have actually changed careers and changed industries, right? How did you know that it was the right time to make such a shift, to get out of your own head and say, okay, yeah, I'm ready for this? And what advice would you give to others who are thinking of making these big career moves? And I'll start with Dr. Costin on this one.
Thank you. Those who know me know that I say regularly, this is my third career, literally. I've had 3 distinctive careers. And for me, it was just thinking about how I wanted to add value, how I wanted to impact. With the military, it was just getting out of the military. You have to go do something else anyway. Like, what is that going to be? But it was a much more conscious decision to leave industry because I literally was interviewing for VP jobs. My parents thought I had lost my mind. I mean, I come from a working class family, and when your eldest is about to hit, you know, the VP level for your family, this is something that gets celebrated. It's a sign of achievement. And I said, yeah, well, now that I know I can do that, I don't know if that I want to do that. They thought I had lost my mind. And really for me, it was a notion of there was an opportunity to have a greater impact. Like I could run a whole region or a division, but if I went and actually taught people, students, university students, it's the ripple effect. They would literally have the opportunity to impact even more things. So that's how I looked at it. But the other reality is it was about the opportunity that comes. So I often tell certainly young people and students, just say yes. Literally, just say yes and watch what happens. You can always change. You can always do something different. And don't be afraid because as the ladies were saying, you're actually going to learn. You have to get outside your comfort zone to learn. You learn nothing in your comfort zone. So if you're going to be exceptional, you actually have to get out of your comfort zone. And sometimes the best way to do that is to try something completely new that you never thought of. But I would say I'm very proud of my career. I think this is the best thing I could be doing. I tell people all the time, this is my vocation, not my occupation. And that would have never happened if I had just said, I think I'm just going to go be a military general one day, right? Just the opportunities that open up for you to leverage your skills, your competencies, your passion to do something that really is going to have a positive impact, greater than what you thought, is what propelled me to just go for it.
Amazing, amazing. Roxanne, any stories to share on that?
The one thing, there's something Dr. Wanda mentioned when she's talking about her vocation versus occupation. The one I'd say maybe advice for people, I'd say looking to kind of do a career shift, you're just looking for a new job. I think sometimes we look at job descriptions and you're like, okay, which ones do I fit? Which ones do you kind of go, okay, let me look at all these jobs. But I think stop, do the inner work. Do the inner
Mm.
work and be like, what do you have to present? Because instead you're trying to force yourself into that job description when it's like at first, and then you end up applying to things that really not necessarily a good fit from what your vocation or what your particular strength or what energizes you. So I think first pause, do the inner work, really see, okay, what do you enjoy doing? What energizes you? What motivates you? And then go out and start looking to see what's out there. That would just be just to make sure kind of like that you're looking for that vocation, obviously your occupation. That's really what's going to drive that change and drive that success.
Awesome. Awesome. And as we move forward in this conversation, we know that, leading is sometimes about making difference in some kind of way with our teams and with clients, or stakeholders that are around us. So, Roxanne, I'll continue with you. You had that unique experience after you started at Walmart, by working in and then managing a large Walmart supercenter store. What did you learn from that retail experience, especially about dealing with people, both, customers and your team members?
I would say, first of all, I think that was till this day the most rewarding time of my career in terms of personal growth. But I had the privilege of working with such hardworking people. I think what I learned the most is like, don't underestimate the power of a conversation or a few good words. Because if you think of a superstore, we're mentioning it a little bit for the call, it's like everything can happen. Anything can happen. Whether the customer, the associates, you don't know what they're having, but that interaction with you, whether it's a 30-second, like you're going to, like, I think in a day I could have easily been interacting with over 100, 200 people just throughout, let's say, over the course of 8 to 10 hours, for example. And that impact, you can make or break someone's day with that 30 seconds. And I think as a leader, even just like, even whether you have a small team or a large team, just don't underestimate that simple interaction. It can have an impact just not only on their day, but also their career. Because they can say, hey, you see them, you give them that motivation or that small conversation that you can have them about an advice that they need, or something they're trying to accomplish. Just don't underestimate that. It might seem trivial, but really that 30 seconds, that 1 minute that you stop to talk to that employee, that associate, or that customer, you don't know what's going on in that person's life on that day, in that moment. It can truly make a difference in their lives.
Nice. And you know, we always think about making that difference sometimes just in corporate, because that's where we spend a lot of our time. But there's the opportunity to do that even outside of work. And so, Iguana, you volunteered at work around diversity and inclusion, and of course, outside of work, helping youth. I believe you founded New Culture, which is a youth mentorship organization. What have you learned even about leadership from volunteering that helps you in your everyday work life?
I'll say volunteering has really taught me that, we're dealing with people, that we're all people and we all have a shared experience. When I do work with the youth, again, it's kind of tied to what Roxanne just said. A little word, a little thing you say could be just what that person needed to set their life on the right path, right? The impact is so strong, and we should not underestimate, what we've experienced ourselves and the lessons we can pass on. So I've learned that it's very important for us to share our lives with other people, because we are all kind of we're in the world together, we're experiencing life together, and that a little thing goes a long way. I also learned from my time there that it is very important as a leader to be approachable. I think that in dealing with people, again, when you see them as people, not employees or resources, but people, then you start to have a heart for where they're at, what they want to do, how they want to grow. And then you start to really meet them where they are. And then they see you in the same light as honest, open, approachable, and then they can come to you with more. And so I think when you develop that kind of, I would say, environment, even at work, you just get better outcomes, right? You get better outcomes with your team, versus a case where you're not open, You don't see things, you just see business, you just see, the numbers, and that's all you're going for. There's a clear difference when you see people as people.
Hmm. Yeah, and to your point, I also want to emphasize that folks shouldn't underestimate how much volunteering can actually help and enhance your leadership profile. So for me, when I moved to Toronto, joined RBC, I joined an organization called the Canadian Association of Urban Financial Professionals, which is a nonprofit focused on advancing Black folks in finance. Phenomenal group. I ended up becoming the president of this organization after a few years of volunteering on the board. And the work that I did there actually elevated my profile internally because then, folks started to see, oh, who is this person that we have that's doing all of this stuff outside? And how come we don't know about them internally? So yeah, if for those of you that are listening, if you're ever thinking about, oh, how do I get to that leadership role and I don't feel like I'm there yet, or I don't have skills. You can get those skills through volunteering as well, and then leverage that. Especially, let's say if you haven't managed people. I ended up getting all of my people management skills the first time from there, right? As a president, I was managing 12 people that weren't motivated by money, so I couldn't use a paycheck to get them to do things. And I find that that's actually much harder than motivating people in a paid employment. So I leverage that in interviews for promoted roles about people management as well. Um, and volunteering also helps you make an impact. And Dr. Wanda, you're a big proponent of making an impact, and that business is more than just revenue and profit. So what role do you see in today's business leaders having in that area of impact for the greater good?
Yes, I mean, I do. Everything in my life has been about impact. How can I have a positive impact? But one of the things we talk about now, and we commissioned a study about this, looking at the role of chief executives now and the expectations that society has for chief executives. Now, when I got my executive MBA multiple years ago, I won't tell you when, some of y'all were probably just being born. Literally, we just had to focus, as you said, Iguano, on the P&L. That's all you had to do. Well, today the expectations are different. They know we're whole people. They know that we must stand for something. And whether we like it or not, we are the representatives of our organizations. Even I, as a dean, stand as the representative of the Smith School of Business at Queen's University. So what do we stand for? And it's no longer sufficient to just say words. You actually have to see action. And so what my belief is that businesses in particular, and I will say, I think this is because I'm a US citizen and we have less confidence, I have to say, in our government than you all do in Canada. And so we think that if anything's really going to change, anything's going to get mobilized, it's through business. If you look at the big shifts, if you look at Title IX of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, none of those shifts happen if businesses don't say we have to change how we promote, who we invite in, how we hire, all of these things. And so to me, it's an organization also has a tremendous capacity of both financial and human resources. And they can bring all of those resources to bear in the communities in which they operate to address social issues. It's no longer enough to say, here's the economic impact, here's how many people I employ. So what? How are you really having a positive impact? How are you making the community better for all the people in that community, including your employees? That's the true value add. And you must have leaders today who understand that, who think that way. And for the record, not as a talking point, but are genuinely believers in saying, I'm going to be authentic, I'm going to be real, and this is how we're going to move forward as an organization.
Yeah, and it's not easy to perform as a leader with that mindset in that capacity. But to get there, you also need support. You need people to sort of help you along the way. No one moves up the ranks all on their own, and we, as I said, we do need help getting there. So Roxanne, I'll start with you. What role has mentorship played in your career?
I think for me, like especially like for example, if I think back to the leadership development program when I started at Walmart, we were assigned mentors kind of along the way. I think the key for me is that it re-energizes you. I think sometimes from the day-to-day you're kind of working just like your role, you're kind of focused on the day-to-day, and sometimes you kind of lose sight of that career path. So I think just having that conversation once a month, once a quarter, just once, however often you meet a mentor, I think it re-energizes you to think like kind of like outside of just, let me get it done, let me get kind of like my work done, the day-to-day, just kind of, and then it takes a step back and have a safe platform for you to discuss a little bit of your career, a little bit of those strengths, a little bit, someone who's outside of your realm of your everyday. And I think those conversations re-energizes you, that career growth. And it's like, okay, then you kind of take a, a little bit of a breather outside of your everyday in order to think about the next steps. And I think for me, that's the role the mentors that I've had along the way have helped me. It's just kind of like a reminder to, okay, take a step back, look at the bigger picture, and kind of think about the next steps as well.
And Iguano, you mentioned about, you talked about Kike and, just you seeing someone of that caliber as a Black female leader. Is it important to have that type of representation, particularly when it comes to your mentors, right? Like, must you, should you have a mentor that looks like you, that sounds like you, or can it be anyone else as long as they're focused on what you want to achieve?
I definitely think it should be a bunch. It should be varied. Like for me, I have had male mentors, I've had female mentors, I've had Black mentors, I've had not-Black mentors. I think that I believe strongly in diversity of thought. And I think that just, saying, okay, I'm Black and I'm only going to find a Black woman. And Kike was a great example. However, she was just one of many people who inspired me and has inspired me in my life, in my career. So I definitely think that you should have, a couple different profiles, as long as they're doing what a mentor should do, which is pull you forward, pull you out of the deep, like she was just saying, and help you to cast a vision, help you to see what you're not seeing, and just also help you to boost your confidence, because part of it is also just validating you and saying, hey, you're doing okay, right? Like don't let all these things get into your head. Don't think that, am I really doing good? Look at all these other, like, don't do that. They will actually validate you. And I think that also plays a part in your confidence. So I would definitely recommend having a diverse group of mentors to help channel and help strengthen different parts of your journey.
Awesome. So I'm going to open up, get to audience questions, just because we've got a lot that have come through, and I want to leave enough time for us to get through all of them. So I'll just pick them at random. And so there's a question from Neema saying, thanks for this insightful panel. As Black people, we can encounter forms of resistance to our leadership from our peers and direct reports due to systemic and institutional inequities. How do you deal with that resistance as a leader, both in terms of leading teams and reaching objectives and driving change despite those obstacles, as well as in terms of self and community care? So who wants to take that challenging question?
Well, I'm happy, the prof can always step in, eh? This is just the nature of being a leader, right? And unfortunately for many of us, many of my colleagues have heard me say this, I'm the lonely only, right? I'm blessed to be the first time that Queens, which is a very historic, phenomenal institution, but in its 180-year history, it's never had a Black dean. It's never had someone of color at this level in the organization. One of the things I learned yesterday from our talk was this. We forget that often we are brought on board to be change makers. And by that, it means to impact change, to create change, to have some kind of pivot in the organization. But what we often forget is when we come into those spaces, often the first time, we're disruptive. Our mere presence is disruptive. And people are having a hard time seeing us in these roles, not knowing us. And yes, our competencies may be challenged, our abilities may be challenged, but I go back to this notion of a confidence in your abilities to do what you need to do. And then a framing, I saw that question and they talked about, you ask for feedback and you don't really get concrete feedback, right? So then you just have to say to yourself, okay, and this is hard, especially for Canadians, so I apologize, I'm gonna try to say this nicely, but does it matter? Like, honest to goodness, is this someone who really is going to have an influence on your capacity to lead and lead effectively? There are going to be a whole slew of naysayers, but there's also going to be a whole crew of people who are supporting you, even if they don't tell you, and who are hoping you will do what you were hired to do, right? So sometimes I have to have a mental note that says, who's it coming from? Is it valid? And then if it isn't, what am I going to do with that information? And sometimes I have to put my ego aside and say, okay, is there a piece of, with all feedback, there's always a piece in there that's like, okay, that might be true, right? And so how do I take the piece that seems relevant, or does it tell me information that I need to know for how I move through the world and how I engage with people that I support? And then how do I leverage that information? But to me, it's about, is it really valid, and consider the source. And if you are hearing it multiple times in multiple ways, then it's time to step back and reflect and say, why am I being perceived in this way? And what can I do to change that perception? Now, many people will say that's unfair. It is. It is what it is, right? This is our responsibility as a leader to do these things. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Wanda. So another question from Loretta. How can I balance my reserved introverted personality with my desire to become a leader? And how do I leverage my experience over 10 years of financial services and create a path for myself? I'll answer this one, because as much as most people think, I actually am an introverted person, and I actually wrote about this specifically about what I call the hidden power of introverted leadership. And there's a book that I would recommend, if you're an introvert and are looking to to move up, or wondering how you can manage. It's called Quiet by Susan Cain. It's called Quiet: The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking, by Susan Cain. So I think that's a great book that you should read. And the way that you can sort of manage that personality to become a leader is just embrace the nature, right? Just accept who you are as an introvert. I feel like it's a secret weapon, not a liability. You can be open about this introverted nature as well, and that kind of brings respect. Then maybe cultivate your skills, figure out where introversion can help in skill generation. So like communication skills, managing stress better, and then speaking up when necessary. All right. What I found that worked for me was, even though I wasn't the noisiest person in a room, when I did speak, I spoke thoughtfully. I asked good questions, and people paid attention, because it's like, oh, Aziz doesn't speak very often, so we should probably listen to him because he's got something to say. And then just use that natural ability to be a more active listener, right? A lot of people really appreciate being heard, and if you're the person that listens, because as an introvert, you're more likely to be a listener than the talker, then it helps you in becoming more of a leader. Any other thoughts anyone wants to share on that one?
Aziz, I think you said it well. I was
Awesome.
gonna say, be you. Don't try not to be an introvert. Just be you. Embrace it.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Another question from Laura. How do you deal with situations when your leadership is being questioned for no valid reason, and when you are requiring clarity, none is given? This is cool.
That's such an interesting question. Look, leadership is not easy. It's tough, right? It's tough that there will be times when things will happen and they don't seem fair, they don't seem well judged, etc. But I think all of those should help you build your skills as a leader. All of those things should help pull you up. And what that means is, number one, I always say, one of the basic qualities of a leader is to not be reactive, emotionally reactive. Don't and please don't also play victim mindset. One of the things that we do sometimes is, hey, I must be getting all of this because I'm a woman, or I must be getting all of this because I'm Black. And maybe it's none of that, or maybe it is that. But I always tell people, how about you take all of that away? Just 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 let all of those things fall to the ground and then face the issue, right? Because all of that can really taint how you respond. So I would say, first of all, don't play victim mindset. Tackle it objectively. Number two, don't be reactive. So don't get emotional about it. Don't try to attack the person. Don't Don't do that. That's not leadership. Again, use your mind and think objectively. What's going on here? What do they need clarity on? What exactly about my leadership is being questioned? And then address it. I think one of the toughest things in leadership is how much you have to address issues. No one wants to take that accountability and go talk about it, but a leader has to, someone has to. And so just embrace it, address it. If it's a repetitive behavior, and if you see it's going nowhere, the person continues to just, it feels like an attack. There are channels to escalate things like that once you've done your part, right? There are people to talk to in your organization around, situations, there's advice you can get from HR. There are ways to do that. But one thing I just want to tell people not to do is don't think it's because I'm this and I'm that and that, and just start reacting from a victim mindset, and just use your mind and act like a leader.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Another question from Tyrene. I work in construction. How do you navigate becoming a leader and gaining the respect in a very male-dominated industry?
Well, I was in the military, so I don't know that you can get more male-dominated than that, right? And actually, believe it or not, even when I was at Pepsi, I was responsible for leading 14 route drivers who were all men and delivered Pepsi products all over the city of Phoenix. And I was their leader. And what I think is important is we have to be able to shift the gender perceptions, gender dynamic, gender stereotypes. And in construction, not unlike what I was doing in the military, there's an era of physical fitness, right? And in that space, when I demonstrated that I was physically fit and capable of literally doing what they were doing, there was a piece of that like, okay, so I'm not gonna, and really it comes from a place of, I'm gonna have to carry her weapon one day, or I'm like, yeah, no, you don't. I got my own weapon. Thank you very much. And I can hang with you. So it's a perception thing there. The other piece is an awareness of your competencies. This is gendered, but we each bring very different competencies and skills to the table. And the ability to leverage things like empathy, listening skills that you referenced early, active listening, and the number one would be solving problems in a different way, right? So if you can solve people's problems, they really don't care what you look like, because they're like, oh, wow, we've been complaining about that for 2 years, and this person came in and fixed it. Wow, that's pretty awesome. Or, wow, I actually felt hurt today, and someone has some compassion for what I'm currently experiencing. And how do we do that? I'm sorry, there's apparently something going on here in Kingston, if you can hear the sirens in the background. But those are the things I found that are foundational, even though it is a male-dominated environment. That's one of the things that I focused on as a woman in a male-dominated industry.
Great. Thanks, Wanda. Appreciate that. Next question from Tino. Is an MBA really necessary to move to executive level positions? I did the Queen's Advanced Executive Certificate and was wondering if I should have done an MBA instead.
Maybe I'll take that one. I think honestly, nobody can answer that question for you. I think that's a personal question, but I think at the end of the day, it depends on what it is that you're trying to do with it. Are you trying, like, for example, for Aziz and I, we're trying to pivot, let's say, from the public sector to the private, or if you're trying to change industries, or maybe it's just that you want a deeper knowledge throughout the kind of just like increase your business acumen. I think it's what you want, because at the end of the day, an MBA, I think, is this also a lot. Yes, you learn the tactical skills. You're going to grow your network. You're going to grow in terms of your personal awareness. I think it's more than just the acronym after your name. Like, there's a whole, and I can speak from my experience, it's a whole journey of self-discovery, if I could say. So I think it depends on what is it that you're trying to accomplish with it in terms of like that next step in your career. And also, like, are you ready to to put the work in, right? Because it is a big investment. And I think at the end, for me, it was 100%, I would redo it any day. That was my personal experience in terms of what I've learned, my experience at Queen's, not just because of what I was able to pivot, but just It helped me with my confidence. It helped me with the knowledge, the business acumen across just across the board. So it's that self-work. Just kind of like earlier we're talking about kind of focusing, okay, what is it that you want to do with it? And then being able to make that decision for yourself, but you're definitely going to come out winning.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all of that. A question from Samuel. How do you deal with a situation where you're put in a leadership position and you need to learn from your subordinates because they're more experienced and competent in the field?
I can
I would
try that. Oh, go ahead, Roxanne.
Maybe I'll just make it quick because I think as part of the leadership, exactly, I was thrown into that at Walmart. As part of the leadership development program, I was in a store where people have been doing their jobs for about 15 years. You had assistant managers that was looking to get to store managers or co-managers. And now here I come, university degree, just joined Walmart, and I'm supposed to be their leader for the year. So I'd say at the beginning of that year, definitely got a lot of pushback from some of the senior, more experience. And I think embrace it. I think you have to validate them. It's like, hey, I'm not here to take your job necessarily, or I'm not here, like, I can actually help you. And I think it's a question of not coming in and pretending that you know it all. Acknowledge the gaps that you have and be like, hey, that's when you rely on them and you actually support them, find the gaps that they do have, that they need, whatever they need help with, but also just acknowledge their skill set. No, I think that's the number one thing when you're coming into a role like that. And eventually the credibility will come and they will be on board.
I think also that you have to look at leadership as the person who sees the bigger picture. They're experts in their fields and their domains. That's great, but a leader is very good at connecting the dots, right, and breaking silos and bringing things together to create bigger impact. So I think that if you think about it from that perspective, then you would pull on their expertise and you would acknowledge it and you would leverage it and you would not fight it or, again, what you said, try to act like you're the one who knows and they don't know. No, you leverage what they have. They are your team. But you do a very good job at creating bigger impact by pulling all of them together and seeing the bigger picture.
Agreed. This question is from Zefe. How do you overcome imposter syndrome and having a target on your back to get through into your leading / prominent roles? I think I'll give some points here. I think this one is about the mindset, right? It starts there. And Roxanne, I think you mentioned something about doing the inner work, right? I think that's something that everyone has to practice. We all have a moment of feeling, like an imposter, like, how did I get here? Like, if only they, realize that I don't know as much as I think that I know, that I'll get found out and all of that fun stuff. But there are people in positions higher than you that don't know as much as you do. So that should give you at least some confidence that, hey, you can make it too. But that feeling of being an imposter comes from a place where we don't feel as confident as we should, right? And that confidence can come from, or you can regain if it's lost, or get that confidence by looking at everything that you've done. And not just everything that you've done, but who you are as an individual. I always tell some folks that I mentor that, your story is not just about the places that you've worked or the tasks that you've done. Your story is about who you are completely as an individual, where you grew up, who you have at home, whether you've got kids, whether you're interested in sports, whether you have a favorite team. That is a totality of your being. And in some way, shape, or form, all of those things have influenced and impacted the person that stands in front of you, in front of the mirror today. And if you take all of that, in addition to your knowledge, your skills, and your network, that can give you the confidence to actually tackle any situation. And the reason I bring in the network is because sometimes, yeah, you have to reach out to other people that you know to get answers, to solve a problem at your workplace. But if you haven't cultivated a good enough network, that might be difficult to do. So think of all of that, just who you are, your skills, your knowledge, your network, and everything that you've done, and that could help you overcome that imposter syndrome as well.
Could I
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I was reading that question, and it also talked about, feeling that I got a job because of how I present in the world, that I'm the diversity hire or what have you, right? So I'm going to share something that's probably a little controversial, but it's how I feel. I am very confident that there's not been a leadership position I've gotten anywhere where some of that decision isn't because I happen to be an African-American woman. Fully, I would dare someone to challenge that assumption of mine, right? The good news is, and pardon my language, I'm damn good at my job, right? So what other people perceive has nothing to do with me. People are going to put that on you. You don't have to wear it, right? I'm sure there are many people who said, that's the diversity dean. No, I'm the dean, actually, right? I'm the dean. And so if I happen to present this way, that's fine. But the reality is I was chosen, I was hired. It was a remarkably competitive process. And I will say this, again, growing up in the US, I don't know that this is true in Canada, but in the US, we're taught, African Americans, from the minute we come out of the womb, you are going to have to be better to be considered equal. And you just need to know that you will have to demonstrate that on a regular basis. So I grew up doing that my whole life. And for me, it's just watch and see what I'm capable of as a leader and how I'm going to bring my entire team with me so that we can be successful, right? You can call me the diversity dean, and I'm going to brag right here for a moment on my team. Guess who has the #1 full-time MBA in Canada right now? Yeah, Smith School of Business, led by the diversity dean, right? But it's my ability. I have amazing people that work in Smith. I just mean amazing. The talent is mind-blowing. But they also need someone who believes in them, who's going to set a stage where they can bring their authentic selves to work every day so that they can perform at their best every day in service to our students and each other. And that's how we get to be the #1 full-time MBA in Canada. It's creating spaces where people can thrive so that they can have this outcome. And the leadership that allows people to do that, and your ability to identify top talent and surround yourself with the best talent, that's the difference. And that comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes, and you can call me whatever. The outcomes will dictate the success.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Wanda. So just as we wrap up, just a final question for everyone, and I'll start with you, Iguana, and everyone's going to answer the same question. But if you could look back and give your younger self some advice, what would it be?
It would be courageous. Don't pull back. Just keep going. Continue to be courageous, no matter how it looks.
Awesome. Roxanne?
I would say follow your own path. Define your own definition of success. Kind of drown out the noise by the others, drown out the successes of others. You can be happy for them, but find out what you need to be successful and happy. That's what I would say.
Awesome. And Dr. Wanda?
You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. There's going to be some difficult times, but you will weather that storm, and you have what it takes. Just believe that.
Awesome. Amazing. I tell myself, take more risk. Just don't be afraid to take more risk. A lot of us as Black folks sometimes are culturally raised to be risk averse, be seen and not heard, right? Sometimes you hear that in a bunch of African homes. Respect your elders by not challenging them, right? A whole bunch of things, right? But I'd say for me, it would just be don't be afraid to take risks. Well, thank you very much, Eguano, Roxanne, Dr. Wanda. I appreciate your insights, your stories, and I hope all of you in the audience benefited from this session. And as you celebrate, Black History Month as well, think about your leadership path, whether you're on it or working towards it, and use some of these individuals here as inspiration to get to where you want to be as well. Just a few things to highlight. If you wanted to hear more about my podcast, you can listen to the Made to Lead podcast everywhere you get your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. as well. And if you want to get expert insights from Smith researchers on leadership, teamwork, and a whole lot more, you can visit the Smith Business Insight website at smithqueens.com/insight. And I think someone will pop it in the chat for you. But yeah, once again, thank you everyone for showing up. And from the Smith School of Business, Queen's University, thank you for attendance and tuning in today. And we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day and have a fabulous rest of Black History Month.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Aziz.